Meant the Canucks had to take some offseason hits. To speak to that, here's Farhan Lalji in Vancouver. Farhan, Markstrom, Tanev, Toffoli, among others, all gone. But they did have one key add.
Well, really, the only move to like is the addition of Nate Schmidt, who is a dynamic offensive defenseman who's easily going to insert himself into the top four and make the Canucks defense better offensively. There still are some concerns, though, about the entire defensive core 1 through 6, because the likelihood is that Tyler Myers will play on a top pair with Quinn Hughes. And while Myers has done that before when the team has been trailing in regular situations, that hasn't happened a lot. And there certainly are some questions around Myers' ability to handle himself defensively in top four matchups, especially relative to the guy the club just lost in Chris Tanev. And then you've got Alex Sedler, who likely goes on a second pair with Schmidt, and he's probably better served transitioning into a third pair. That's not likely to happen. So 1 through 4, they're better offensively. 1 through 6, not sure in terms of both ends of the ice.
Well, Farhan, as the dust settles on this new look roster, what are your expectations for this team for the upcoming season?
Well, I think this team actually takes a step back in the coming season because outside of Schmidt, they really haven't been able to improve at all. Now, you can certainly make the case salary-wise for them walking away from Jacob Markstrom and Chris Tanev. Probably prudent decisions, but given their cap situation, they couldn't get Tyler Toffoli back at a fairly affordable deal. They couldn't sign a guy like Josh Leva, who, if healthy, is a pretty good depth middle six forward, and he came in at well under $1 million per season. So you're into the final years of the entry-level contracts for both Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, and they simply haven't been able to get better throughout their roster. So I think as a result, this team will be lucky to tread water in 2021.
Wow. Farhan Lalji in Vancouver. For more on the Canucks, let's bring in our analyst, Mike Johnson. MJ, the Canucks knocked off the Wild in the qualifying round. They eliminated the defending Cup champs in the first round and forced Vegas all the way to Game 7. Pretty impressive run. But with all the changes, how far can they go this year?
Well, Farhan summed it up really nicely, Gino. And I think this year coming up, probably the first round, making the playoffs would be realistically about as far as they can go, given the changes that they've had. Losing Markstrom, turning the reins over to Demko, losing Tanev, losing Toffoli. So they're probably will take a bit of step back. But the good news is they're still growing with their young stars. And they do have a couple of the best and brightest young stars to really anchor their team, push them forward, and make sure that they don't go too far back to a point of, struggling to be a relevant team. And Elias Pettersson, I think, will continue to get better and emerge as really a top 10, top 15 kind of player in the NHL. And Quinn Hughes, I think he'll be being talked about for Norris consideration. I think the more you watch him play, the more you will appreciate just how great he is. So while it may be a slight step back, I don't expect them to push for a Stanley Cup or a conference final. Making the playoffs, probably a pretty realistic goal for the Vancouver Canucks.
Norris conversation. Wow, MJ, that's big. All right, so that's the